Here we will be doing a live coding Fictious social media app responses. 3 services. Hello everyone. A very warm welcome to Think Constructive. I am Isha. In this session, I will be discussing the service creation part of microservices. So this is essentially the second part of the ongoing microservices series. In this session, I will first explain you the design part of the Fictious social media application, and then I will tell you which all parts of that application we will be building in our series for the demonstration purposes. All right, here we will be doing a live coding for 3 services and will be establishing the intercommunication between them. All right, so stay connected, watch the session till the end so that you don't miss upon on any of the part. Let us quickly start with the discussion of Fictious social media application. So here is the social media example app. So this social media application we have already discussed in the part 1 of the microservice session. I'll just give you a quick recap of this and then we will proceed with the further discussion. All right, this is an example of Fictious social media application in which we can see there are different services demonstrated. So there is a user service, there is a profile service, post service and notification service. Each service is having their own DB and there is a separate UI service which is further interacting to the end user or client. All right, this UI service is talking to user profile, post notification and many more other features which might be implemented in terms of services. Okay, so each service can interact with each other depending on the need. All right, so this is the example application we had discussion. Just in case if you haven't yet watched the part 1 of the session details are getting displayed on your screen and also link is tagged in the above card section and also in the description box below. Feel free to explore the part 1 of microservices session. All right, so currently we'll proceed from here. So now let's have a look what all services out of these services we will be implementing. Here is a detailing example for this application. So in the demonstration, I will be implementing user service, post service and notification service. So in this green box user service, you can notice there is an input. So this service will take input as user ID and will give us the output as user details, which will consist of list of post details as well as notification details. But we should understand that this user service is specifically designed to have only user specific information. That means it will have user ID, user details such as username, user phone number and which all post or notifications are created for user. So it will store their IDs. Okay. So it will have those IDs, not the post and notification details, because that is the job of separate service to store detailed posts corresponding to a post ID and detailed notifications corresponding to a notification ID that you can see here with the help of post and notification. These are 2 separate services. All right. So whenever this user service is queried by giving the user ID, it will return the user details along with the post details and notification details. But as I said, it doesn't have post or notification details. So what it will do, in order to get the post details, it will talk to post service by providing post ID as input. In return, it will get all the post details. Similarly, it will talk to notification service by providing notification ID and will get the notification details in return. It will have all the details in user service and will return as a response. All right, so that's how our example microservice will be working. So in this session, we will be creating user service, post service and notification service and we will expose their get API and further we will see how user can talk to post service and get the relevant details as well as notification service and get the relevant details. In this session, we will be doing a beginner implementation for this communication, a very basic one. And then I will explain you what are the problems with that basic implementation that will be evolved with the the advanced design patterns or the relevant design patterns which we should be using in our microservices or are generally used in the microservices world. All right. Now let's have a look on what will be implemented in this session. All right. So we will be implementing 3 Spring Boot projects, more essentially I should say 3 services which we will be implementing with the help of Java Spring Boot. All right. Why? Because as I showed, those 3 services, user, post and notifications, have their separate responsibility, and that is the core fundamental behind microservices, that each service will have its own independent responsibility. Okay, so in our case, user is having one responsibility, post is having another responsibility, as well as notification is having its own responsibility. So we will be creating these 3 services and will be exposing their get APIs. All right. So we will build user API service, post API service, as well as notification API service. That will be followed by user service calling to post and notification service using REST template. So as I said, we will be first establishing this communication using a beginner way so that you all can understand, okay, these are the basics. Now when we are evolving, what challenges we were facing so that we must evolve this service or use some other mechanism. All right, let's proceed towards the implementation. So we will be implementing microservices throughout the series using Java and Spring Boot. All right, let us quickly bootstrap our project through Spring Initializr. All right. Okay, so we'll go to start.spring.io. We'll select project as Maven project and Spring Boot version is 2.7.5. Group will be com.thinkConstructive. Artifact, let us give it as user service. Okay, and description, let us write as user service demo. Yeah, and packaging jar Java 17, and let us add the dependency as web because we are going to expose RESTful web services. Okay, and we'll hit generate. You can see user service.zip is downloaded. Okay, similarly we will do for our post and notification service. So I'll just say post, and in description I'll do the changes related, that is post service demo. Everything else would remain same, and we'll say generate. You can see post service.zip is generated. Similarly, I'll create artifact for notification. So notification service and description will also be notification service demo. All right, everything else would remain same for now. So I'll hit generate. So you can see all 3 services zips are downloaded. I'll quickly extract these zips and load them to IntelliJ IDEA editor. So I'll be using IntelliJ IDEA editor. You can use any other Java editor of your choice, whichever you are comfortable with. All right. Here you can see I have unzipped and loaded all 3 services in different IntelliJ IDEA editor. So first one, you can notice user service. Okay. Then here you can see notification service. And the third one, you can see post service. All 3 services are extracted and loaded here in the IntelliJ. Okay. So now one by one in each service, I will do the required changes. Okay. And then we will bring up all 3 services together and would test them. Okay. So now I will do the changes in user service first. Okay. So I'll just go to its service application. It's a normal service application, just like other Spring Boot application. Okay. So here is a trigger point for that. All right. So first I will add the model class, which we would need here to add the required attributes for user. Okay. So I will name the class as user. In this user class, let us start adding the required attributes. Let's say I would want to add private string user ID. Okay. Then I will say private string username and private string user. Going forward, I will be adding some more attributes here. Okay, so let us quickly generate its getter, setter, constructor, whatever we need. Okay, so I'll just say generate constructor for this. So with all three attribute, I will generate constructor. Okay, we'll just reposition the stuffs. And now I will generate their getter and setter. Cool. Yeah, I'll just shift these attributes declaration here. And it's better to have constructor also at the right place. This will increase the readability of the code. All right. There you go. So here is the model class, user model class. Okay. And now let us quickly create the controller for this. Just say user controller. Okay. First of all, I will mark it as RestController. Okay. And will set its request mapping to user. All right. And now inside this user controller, let us quickly write the GetMapping. GetMapping, and what this GetMapping will have, it will have value is equal to inside double quote / inside curly braces. It should be user ID. Let's say I want to give this name. So now whatever get API I'm going to write, it will expect user ID in the URL, request URL. All right. So I'll just say public user get user. Okay. And as a path variable, I will have user ID. Okay. And this should be mapped to string user ID. Okay. Now inside this get user method, I will create an instance of this user object. Let's say I'll call it as user1. And then I will say user and whatever constructor values I'm supposed to pass. Okay. So let's say first thing is user ID. So whatever user ID I'm getting in the request, I'll give that as is. And then the user name. So let's say I will say user name and I will concat user ID here. Okay. And the next argument is user phone numbers. Let's say xxxxx, and then I will append user ID here as well. Okay. This is how I have created user1, because in the entire microservice session, we will be returning the hard coded values back, because this is not the Spring Boot session. It is a microservice session. So we will be focusing on the microservice related stuff. These service or these values we are creating only for the demo purposes. So this I am not going to connect to the database. Rather, I'll be hard coding certain values here and we will see the demonstration basis on these values. All right. So user1 instance is created and I'll just return this user1. All right. So a simple get URL is exposed for this user. Similarly, I'll be first coding our post and notification service and then we will be evolving them. So here is a post service application. You can see a normal Spring Boot application. I'll be adding quickly a Java class first to add attributes for this post. So post model class I'll be creating. Okay. In this post class, let's say I want to create private string post ID as a first attribute and another attribute as post description. So two attributes we'll be having here. Okay. All right. And then we will be quickly generating its constructor and getter setter. So we will just say generate. First of all, constructor. Okay. And now let us have it getter and setter. Yeah, there you go. So your post model is ready, and now we will create post controller. Okay, just say post controller. Okay, now we will annotate it as REST controller. Now we will set its request mapping to /post. Okay, and inside post controller we will again expose a get URL first of all. So you'll say GetMapping. Okay, and what is the value? It should expect the post ID. So I will say value is equal to, inside double quotes, / inside curly braces, I will say post ID. All right, and now let us write the method for this, that is public. What it should return? It should return post object. Okay, and we will say get post. Let me just refactor this post to post so that it won't have any conflict going forward. Okay, so I will just call it as posts instead of post. Okay, inside post controller now, so we will write the get post method, and inside this method we will write add path variable. Okay, and inside path variable as an argument post ID. Okay, and we will mark this as a string post ID. All right, inside this I will just instantiate one post object and will return that. All right, so I'll say post 1. Okay, should have new post, and it's according to its constructor we will be filling the value. So post ID, the first parameter, I will take it as an input argument, that is post ID, and the description. So let us write some description. So post description for, and we will concat post ID here. Okay, so this is how we have instantiated post 1, and we will just return it for now. Done. Okay, similarly let us do the changes in notification service. In the notification service, first of all, let us create notification model class. I will call it as notifications just to avoid any conflict. Okay, so it should come under com.thinkConstructive package. Okay, so inside this again I will be creating 2 attributes, string notification ID. Okay, and another one is notification, again that will be a string, and I will just say description. All right, let us quickly generate its getter and setter. So here is the model class notifications with notification ID and description as attribute. All right, now we will quickly add notifications controller to expose the get API. All right, so I will just say notification controller. Okay, and here let us first mark it as REST controller and give the request mapping, in this case as notifications. Okay, notification. Fine. Now inside this we will just have get mapping, and inside this get mapping what value we should have? We will have value as / inside curly braces notification ID. Okay, let me just copy it. Yeah, notification ID. All right, and now let us write the get method for notification. It should return what? Notifications object. Okay. I will just say get notifications, and inside this path variable. Okay. And what this path variable should have as parameter? Notification ID, and that should be treated as a string notification ID. All right. And inside this method body, we will instantiate this notification. So I will just say notification 1. Okay. And here I will just pass, will instantiate it, and will say notifications according to its parameters. So first one, notification ID, and second one is the notification description. Okay. So inside notification description, let's say I would want to write notification details, and I will just concat notification ID here. Okay. And will return notification 1 object. Okay. So at the base level, all three services, user service, profile service, and notification services are ready. Their get mappings are exposed. Okay. And now let us quickly bring up the application and see what happens. If I will try to bring up all three applications together, can you imagine what happens? Let us try it. So let me just first bring up this notification service application. Okay. I'll just say run notification service. My service is up and running, and you can see it is started on port 8080. Fine. I did not do any port change, but by default, Tomcat starts at port 8080. So my application is started at port 8080. All right. Similarly, now if I will try to start post service here, what will happen? Again, it will try to get started at port 8080, right? But port 8080 is already used by notification service. So what will happen here? This will start throwing error that port is already in use. So what do? We need to do some port changes for this application so that we don't encounter those kind of issues. So I will just say server dot port is equal to any other port number other than 8080 and whichever free port is available in your system or wherever you are deploying the application. So I will just say port 8081, let's say for post. Okay. And save. Now if I will try to start this application will start successfully. Why? Because now I have changed the port. Okay. So it will now start at port 8081. See, Tomcat started on port 8081 and I don't face any issues. Okay. Now the similar problem we will encounter in user service application, because I did not do any port changes here, and this will again by default try to start at port 8080, which is already in use. So what do? I will do the changes in application.properties. I will register here server.port is equal to any other port which is free. So let's say 8082 in my case. You can use any other number whichever is free in your system or wherever you are deploying this application. All right. So I have changed the port here, and now if I will try to start the application, let us see which port it is using now. So here you can notice Tomcat started at port 8082. Fine. So all three services are successfully started. So now let us check at our local machine, because this is where I have started the application. So I will just say local host. Let's say I'm checking user service. So we have just now started it at port 8082/user. Sorry, I should be giving user ID also. So I'll say user1. What are we getting? So you can notice we had given user ID as 1, user name followed by the user ID and user phone number appended by user ID. This is what we have expected. Let us check another service, which is our post service. Okay, and post service, I believe we started at 8081. So post ID followed by description. Okay, and now we will check our notification service. So we started that at default port, that is 8080. Notification. Okay, so what are we getting here? Notification details, notification ID and description. Okay, let us fix this typo. So all three services are up and running, no issues. They are running independently. Currently, they are not talking to each other. We started with that our user service should typically be returning the complete details of the post of particular user and the details of notifications of particular user. Okay. So let us now go back to our IntelliJ IDE editor, terminate the services and do the required changes. All right. So we are back to user service. I'll just terminate it quickly. So I have terminated the user service and now let us do the required changes, because this service is going to query, post as well as notification service. All right. So here in user service, what we should be doing, we should be creating a REST client which should be able to send the REST request to post as well as notification service. Okay. So such kind of REST client is already provided by Spring Framework, and this is what I'm going to use. So what will I be doing? I will be creating that REST client bean in our main class. Okay. And that I will be injecting in my application. Okay. So I will mark it as bean. Okay. And here I will just say public. It should return REST template. We'll call this method as get REST template. Okay. And in this method, I will be instantiating it. Okay. So I'll just say return new REST template. So this REST template, you can see it is already provided by Spring Framework. All right. So the moment I have used it, you can see this library is already imported. org.springframework.web.client.rest template. Okay, so I have created a bean for this, and whenever, wherever in my application I want to use it, I just need to auto-wire it. Okay, so let's say I want to use it in my controller. So all I need is I need to auto-wire this REST template and this will be injected. Okay, so I'll just say auto-wired. And I will say private REST template and the name, whichever name. Okay. So the moment I will do this auto wiring of this REST template, it will find out if the bean is created and it will inject it here. So we have already created the bean. Okay. So this REST template instance will be injected. So what this REST template is doing, it is creating a REST client which should be able to send the REST request and receive the REST response. Okay. So this much is done. Now, when I want to send a REST request to post service, let me just open the post service. So whenever I am sending a REST request, more specifically the get REST request to this post service, it is returning a post object. Right? So that means I should have this post object in my user service to receive this response. So what will I do? I will copy this post model class from here and put it in my user service also. Okay. I've got my post model here. Similarly, I will get notification model also here. So I've copied notification model and I will put this notification model here in my user service, so that when from user service I send a REST request to post, I should be able to receive the response in post object. Similarly, when I send the notification request to notification service, I should be able to handle the response or receive the response in notification object. All right. Now let us start writing a post query or post REST request for post service. Okay. So when I'm writing it for post service, where will I receive it? I will receive a post response. Okay. Post. What will I do? I will just say REST template. Okay. Because this is creating the REST client. Okay. Dot get for object. What is the signature for this get for object? It will mandatory have a URL and the response type. Other things are optional, but the mandatory parameters are you should be giving the URL to which it is hitting and followed by the class name. That means what kind of response or what type of response it will be returning. Both the stuffs. Okay. So inside double quote, first I will be writing the URL. Let me take it to the next line to increase the readability. Okay. And I will copy the URL of post service. This is the URL, right? And I will give this URL here. All right. And I should give my post class name because this is what the response type will be. Okay. Done. So what this is doing now, it is this REST template with the help of get for object method is hitting this URL, essentially sending a REST request and receiving the response of this type. That is where we are receiving it here. All right. Similarly, let us write for notifications. Notifications is equal to similar thing, REST template dot get for object. Okay. And inside this, the notification REST URI I should be writing, or you can also call it REST endpoint. So there are multiple names. So I will now copy the notification URL. Okay. And we'll put it here. All right. And this should be followed by the type. So type will be, this should be followed by the return type or the response type, you can say. So notifications dot class. All right. Done. So what we have done, with the help of this line, we are able to hit post service, get the response. With the help of this line, we are hitting notification service and getting the response. Till now, everything is good, right? Now, the next thing, we are returning user object, correct? So that means inside user object, I should have or I should store this responses now. Then only I will be able to send it back to the client or send it back in terms of responses. Okay. So what will I do? I will do some changes in this user model class. So I will now include some attributes. Let's say private, post type, and let's say attribute name is post. Okay. Similarly, private, notifications. So these two attributes we have added here, and we should generate its getter and setter also. All right. Okay. So now we have all the things in place. So what we have done, we have created and hit the REST URLs of post and notifications, got the response. And in the user model object, we have included the required attributes for post and notification. Now the last step is we have got the post. Now the next step is we should be setting this post to this user1 object. So user1 dot set post. Okay, and we'll pass this value, whatever we have got. Similarly, For notifications, we will say user1 dot set notifications, and inside this we'll be passing this notifications. Okay, whatever response we have got. All right, so I hope this part of code is very clear. Now let us quickly bring up the application and see the changes. Okay. So you can notice my application is up and running at port 8082. Let us go back to the browser window and put the user service URL. Okay. Enter. What am I getting this time? User ID 1, user name description, user phone number, the details of post. So inside this post attribute, you can notice post ID and description is embedded. Similarly, for this notifications, notification ID and description is embedded. All right. So this is what we wanted to do. So we created 3 services and made user service talk to post and notification service. All looks good and fine, no issues. Do you see some challenges here? I'm sure you must be. So let us now discuss couple of problems which is with the REST template approach, and then we will discuss how can we remove them. Okay. So now every time in the URL, I have given localhost, and that too inside the code. You must have noticed. So that is the kind of hard coding of URLs. So that means whenever in the real time you're going to deploy the application, that server might be having different IPs, different host names. So every time you need to open your code and do these changes and then repack the code and deploy. It's not logical and it's not practical, right? So that is one very important problem which we have with the REST template. What can be another problem? In case of cloud deployments, dynamic URLs. So URLs will be dynamic. So again, REST template approach will not work, because if you somehow configure the URLs in application.properties and pick up the attribute, but that is also not the scalable approach. So when your application grows, when the load on the application grows, you will deploy several instances in the cloud world, and how will you handle them? It's not like that every time you are, picking up the IP and telling this time this load should go to this IP or that IP. There will be some, kind of softwares playing all these roles. Those softwares are typically called load balancers. They will be doing the load balancing stuffs with the help of dynamic URLs and other things also. So again, this approach is not going to work there also. And when there will be multiple environments, this URL identification will even become complicated. So in short, this REST template approach will not be working in those cases. I have showed you this approach so that you can understand very clearly that this is how you'll be developing small services, and they should be talking to each other. They should be capable enough to do that. But in the real world scenario, there are many things to consider in the microservices world beyond REST template. Okay, so that will bring us to the next point, that is the real world microservices pattern, which we will be applying in order to make this inter-service communication possible, and that is called as service discovery. So what in my next lecture I will be discussing service discovery pattern with a detailed explanation and the demonstration, and what demonstration we'll be having in that. How can we set up this service discovery? What is service discovery? In terms of microservices and Spring Boot world, what library, what framework we will be using, and how can we make our current user service calls to post and notification service using service discovery pattern, not with the REST template. All right. Meanwhile, whatever questions you have, I will encourage you to write your questions in the comment section, or if you like any particular part of the session, Please annotate that part in the comment section. That will be helping others. Write down your queries so that in my next sessions, because I am building a complete series of microservices, so I will be able to, take care of your queries or your questions in my next sessions. So your comments, your queries will be helping me there. All right. So feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section. So a quick recap of today's session. What all we have done today, we discussed the basic design of Fictious social media app. And then we created 3 Spring Boot projects. We have built user API service, post API service, notification API service, and established a call between user, post, and notification services. All right. And we have also discussed the problem with the REST template approach. Thank you everyone for watching the session. I hope you found it useful and you have built all 3 applications along with the sessions. If you haven't yet done so, I would highly encourage you to do that, to build all those applications along with the session. That is going to be extremely helpful for you. There are more Java and Spring Boot related sessions available on the channel. So if you wish to learn all those things in details, please go ahead and explore those sessions also. I hope you liked the session, so hit the like button. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please do so. Subscribe to Think Constructive and also ring the notification bell, because I will continue bringing more and more sessions here. So you will always be updated with that. I would also like to request you to please share the session and channel details with your friends, family, and colleagues, because that's how we will grow more stronger together. So thank you once again. See you in the next session. Bye for now.